Hi everybody, and welcome to a very quick follow-up part of the review for the Nova P300c. So I reviewed this 2 episodes ago. I was quite scathing of some things on it, and Aperture have responded positively and fixed some of those things. So we'll go through that in this episode. Also, I got a lot of user questions. So one thing that I never thought of that surprised me was a lot of young gaffers messaged me saying that instead of hiring Skypanels, they're looking to buy these. How does this compare on a Menace Arm in terms of its weights compared to stripped down Skypanels? So we'll have a look at that. And the first thing I want to clarify with this unit is the dimming test I did. So in that review, I was testing its dimmer response over DMX, and there's a lot of confusion with users who are not industrial users, who don't understand that DMX isn't the phone app. So they're 2 different things. Phone app control is very different to DMX. DMX is a professional dimming protocol used across various brands. Things like lighting desks, for example, use DMX, so it's nothing to do with the phone app. So I just want to clarify how well this thing can dim over its phone app, because I never showed that. Okay, so I'll just put the room to black. And we're going to start off with linear dimming. So it's extremely smooth. Now I can get that dimming even smoother if I come up from the bottom in exponential. It's very, very smooth. And S-Log. Okay, so a lot of people were quite disappointed. They were worried that you wouldn't be able to use this with your Sidus Link app and do stuff creative. You can. It's got a very good dimmer system. It's just not integrating correctly with DMX yet. The next thing we'll talk about is the brightness of the unit. So there is an error in my video. So on the table where I've got the brightness readings I took, I've put down that I took those measurements at 1 meter. I actually took them at 3 meters. So it should be pretty obvious when you look at it, especially as I'm comparing it directly to a Skypanel. And my dialogue is correct. But I can't re-edit the video, unfortunately, because due to a system crash, I've lost the entire episode. And if I download the episode off YouTube and then re-edit it, none of the close-ups work. All the close-ups are out of focus because I use digital zoom-ins for the close-ups. But just be aware that table should be at 3 meters, not 1 meter. And now here's where the bulk of people are confused about the brightness of this thing. One question I've been asked a lot is, why would I buy this over, say, a Mixpanel 150? Because on paper, the Mixpanel 150 looks just as bright. And here's the answer. I forgot to mention the beam angle on this light. This light spits out what I would consider to be a usable beam of 120 degrees. So it's got a massive flood on it. You could light a studio cyc wall with these things, no problem at all. Whereas something like the Mixpanel 150, which is a way cheaper light, by the way, the Mixpanel 150 is about the same brightness, but it's a spotlight. Okay, it doesn't light a large area. So in all fairness, if you were just going to light somebody standing in front of a camera 2 meters away and use that as your key light for, say, outdoor broadcast work or something like that, then the Mixpanel 150 is probably the smarter buy. But if you want to light large spaces or large modifiers like a 5-foot octadome, then this thing is definitely the way brighter unit. Now let's go back and have a look at some of the DMX issues I found. Now, 2.5 days after reporting these issues to Aperture, they had sent me a firmware beta patch for testing. So my first issue was you couldn't set a loss of DMX behavior. Now that's in the menu system. So in the review, if you disconnected the DMX signal, the light went to black, which would be a disaster on live-to-air television. But now I can set the unit to maintain its last signal or its last command. And when you connect the DMX back in, or gets reconnected to DMX, it seamlessly switches back to DMX and has its response. Now the next issue was the system crashing on DMX if you did a hard turn off and a hard turn on. So what I mean by that is if you've got this in a studio lighting grid and you turned the power off overnight and then you came back in the next morning and turned it on, the unit actually crashed. Now they've fixed that. So let's do a hard boot. The unit fires up into DMX mode. It fires up in the previous settings it had, then it gets its signal and now it responds. So they've fixed that crash. Now the next thing we'll talk about is a possible issue, which is non-existent, a possible issue that a lot of gaffers noticed and expressed concern over. And that is the controller doesn't follow pins to power protocol. So what I mean by that is you have these pins here, which is, or some of these pins here are supplying power to this unit. Those pins are exposed, and the concern was, if you shorted this out, would it destroy the circuit board inside the Nova? And the answer to that is no. Okay, they have surge arresters in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately short it out on the stand, and then I'm going to plug it back in. Okay, so just so you know I'm not making this up, we can have a listen to it shorting out. Now, which way? Okay, this way. Wait till that car goes past. Okay, get a good spark. Oh, there we go. Got it. Oh, there's a bit of amperage there. Okay. All right, so if... I'll get my microphone back on, sorry. All right, so if you do short it out, just wait about 5 seconds because you've got to let the surge arrestor reset, okay? And there you go, okay? So the Nova works perfectly fine. So I asked them, why didn't they just follow pins to power protocol anyway? It would have been way cheaper than putting surge arresters in and stuff like that. And they had a pretty good answer to it. On the controller, you'd have pins at this end. And you know, it's something that people would be touching and holding, and it'd be uncomfortable for the user. So that sort of makes sense. Now, the next thing I want to point out is this is low voltage. Okay, so there's no risk of electrocution or anything like that touching in here. And it was extremely hard to short out because of the pin configuration. So I really had to try. Look, as long as you don't stick your tongue in there, you're not going to feel anything, and you're not going to get enough voltage to trip an earth leakage circuit breaker or a residual current device. So it's not going to turn your set off if you do short it out. Okay, so the next most common question I've been asked, and it's amazing, I did a 50-minute review and there's still stuff I missed. Operating angles. Okay, so this thing has center-mounted cooling fans. It's got no limitation on operating angles. You can operate at 360 by 360. No problem at all. No matter how you can rig it, it'll run. All right, so I think I've covered everything except talking about Menace Arming it and the weight. I really am surprised how many people ask me about Menace Arming it. I never would have thought to Menace Arm it because I have large, lightweight LED panels for Menace Arming. I have light matte spectrums, things like that. But it makes sense if you can't afford a light matte spectrum. You know, this is a good all-round unit sort of thing compared to that. All right, so a couple of little issues. The first one, this one Aperture's aware of. It's just a little thing, but something to be aware of before you go to mount it on your Menace Arm. Something to think about, and that is it's only got the one safety pin hole in the stirrup. It doesn't have two, so you can't, 90 degree that way or 90 degree that way. And it is orientated 90 degrees to the stirrup. So the problem you can have with that is if you've got your Menace Arm, say, going that way and the light going in the same direction, tilting in the same direction, if you're using a spring pin, it can jam against the Menace Arm and you can't get a full connection. Look, you could find some way around it, no problem at all, but it is something to be aware of before you start setting it up. Aperture do know about this, and they're going to fix that on future batches. You could always drill if you've got a lathe or something, you could drill a hole through the other side. Now, if you're thinking, oh, that's no big deal, I'll just undo the spigot and turn it 90 degrees. Well, they've got an anti-slip spigot design, so you can't do that. But look, it's one of those minor little things that you wouldn't notice until you try to put it on a Menace Arm. The next thing that would concern me with having this on a Menace Arm is what you're doing with it. So if you've just got the light by itself on a Menace Arm, no problem at all. If you've got it with a small modifier like a snap box, no problem at all. If you're in a studio with a 5-foot octadone, no problem. But if you had the snap grid on that 5-foot octadone, I'd be worried about the flex in this stirrup. Okay, so I'd be worried that after about 3 or 4 days you might bend the stirrup. And if you had, say, a 5-foot octadone on a Menace Arm outside, or a big thing like the dome lantern, I'd be worried about the play in this giving you issues with the light moving around or the light shaking. Now, having just criticised the heck out of the stirrup, I've got to say that I think Aperture have made the right decision with it for about 95% of their customer base. I think a heavy stirrup would put them off buying the Nova, because a lot of people that are looking to buy this think that it's a heavy light anyway and don't get how powerful it is for its form factor. But Aperture have future-proofed the design of this in some way, because the stirrups do remove, okay, and you've got this, the lightning clamp here is super strong, so I reckon a ball mount in that would be ideal and be able to support the weight. But when I saw that this was all removable, I got a bit excited and sent a video message off to them, asking questions like, are you guys going to make like a 4-mount system, stirrup, so we can put this in a soft box and have 4 of these and bang? Are you going to make a ball mount? I got really excited, and the reply I got back was a smiley face emoji with, "We just don't know yet." Okay, so they're new to this marketplace, their toes are in the water, they want to feel what's going on. But I think if you're looking at this and the only thing putting you off is the stirrup, I think it might be worth encouraging them to make a bigger stirrup or a ball mount system as an optional extra for gaffers. They are a bit concerned that gaffers won't pay that sort of money, and I've tried explaining to them that I've got 4 Skypanel stirrups sitting in the corner over there because I use ball mounts. Gaffers spend money on things like that. We like having that option, and even with an additional mount system, this is still really, really cheap. One thing I do have to compliment them on is how easy it is to get a large accessory onto the front of this light when it's on a Menace arm, because of the automatic locking system on the front accessory slot. Anyway, let's get into the weights. So the Nova comes in at 10.3 kilograms. That's my measurements, 10.3 kilograms, because it's got a, that's with the controller on. That's because it's got a built-in power supply. So comparing that to a Skypanel S30 stripped down, Skypanel S30 stripped down in this configuration, no power supply, stirrup mount, came in at 7.4 kilograms. So that is a substantial difference on a Menace arm. It really is. So I found with this I couldn't put it on a single steel extendable Menace arm. It was bending it. So that's why I had to set up on the big Menace arm at the front. But it is worth pointing out this is 50 to 60% brighter than the S30. So I think we should also compare it to a stripped down S60 to give you some idea. So a S60, the lightest weight stripped down, which is what I do, which is a ball mount and no diffuser. So for example, I'm running this through a say an octadome over the top of an actor. So I'm using the octadome as the mixing panel anyway. I don't need the diffuser. That comes in at 10.55 kilograms. Now the heaviest sort of strip down, if you keep the diffuser in it and go with the stirrup, that comes in at 12.05 kilograms. So that gives you some idea of the weights in terms of running it out on a Menace arm. Alright, so I think I've got the Nova P300c covered off now. If you've got any questions or that I haven't covered, put them in the comments down below. I'll see if I can find out an answer for you. And look, in all honesty, I will be buying another one. I think for my small van that does corporates, high-end corporates and low-end TV commercials, this thing is an absolute no-brainer. It really is. It's so cheap, such good color render, such high firepower, a couple of modifiers like softbox modifiers, and this is a winner. In terms of buying more of them to replace other lights in my big van, I'd be holding off and seeing what the future brings. And just to put that in some sort of perspective, I didn't buy Skypanels until they got to version 3.5 firmware and had a ball mount. That was the tipping point for me. So it'll be interesting to see if this thing gets to a tipping point where I go, okay, replace my S30s at the very least with these. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. All right, so the next episode of Gaffering Gear, we're going to be talking about LED tubes and controlling them. So we'll have a look at, Kino flow housings, if they're good option for you. We'll be taking a look at honey crates, DOP choice products, and even taking a look at what Nangwan has to offer, or Nanlite, sorry. So we'll be covering all that in the next episode of Gaffering Gear, so I'll see you then. Take care.